When we think of some of the brands that are associated with TWS, KZ probably isn't one of those that would come into your mind straight away. They haven't managed to translate the success they've had in the IEM market through to wireless earbuds just yet. It's not that their previous releases haven't sounded good, because they have, but they've lacked a little bit in the way of features compared to some of the other bigger players. The Xtra are their latest opportunity to change that though, combining their vast experience in tuning with a 10mm composite diaphragm dynamic driver, and these are their first buds with active noise cancellation. You can pick them up for around £46 from AliExpress. I've left a link in the description. Coming up, we've got binaural recordings of both the audio and the ANC, so you can judge firstly what they sound like, and secondly how strong that noise cancellation is. We'll put them through all the usual stability tests and see how they perform when using them for exercise, and we'll hear how they are on calls in multiple busy real life locations. The charge case for the Xtra is hockey puck shaped with a transparent lid. The hinge to the lid doesn't have any friction to it, so it will slam shut in the wind, something worth bearing in mind if you're frequently taking the buds out and putting them back in public. If you've had any of KZ's previous TWS releases, you'll note this design hasn't changed. There's no wireless charging, you have to use the USB socket at the back, and KZ haven't included a charge cable, so you'll have to use one of your own. Plug it in and you'll see the LEDs flash both on the case and on the buds themselves, turning red to denote that they're charging. Open the case up and you'll see that Hall switch mode kicks in, the LEDs turn blue, and it starts that pairing or connection process, with the lights then turning themselves off once connection is complete. There's also a small pairing button just below the case LED, and it's worth familiarising yourself with this button because the Xtra do support Multipoint. If you're new to TWS, this means that you can connect to two devices simultaneously, and whilst oftentimes this is managed through a TWS app, because KZ doesn't have one, you'll have to manually disconnect from your first device, then trigger the pairing process using that button in the case to connect to your secondary device, before then reconnecting to the first. Whilst this sounds a bit convoluted, you only have to do it once, and thereafter switching between the two is quite simple. You just pause the primary device and play the secondary device. The buds themselves have a real custom IEM feel to them due to their shape and curvature. They're one for the no stems brigade, but the branding on the faceplate is very overt, which isn't the most appealing unless you're Elon Musk. The buds look on the face of it a little bit thick and bulky, but due to that curvature on the inside, I found that for my ears at least, the stability was excellent. They don't wear as heavy as I expected, and there's plenty of passive noise isolation. I found them surprisingly comfortable for everyday use, and the large faceplates are a benefit when it comes to the controls. The controls are a little bit limited in that you don't have volume control. Single tap will play and pause, and double tap cycles through your tracks. Triple tapping the right bud puts it into gaming mode, and holding down the left bud will cycle through your ANC modes. Unfortunately, you can't change the controls or customize them in any way due to the absence of an app, and you can't change which ANC modes it cycles through. You're stuck with ANC on, off and transparency. I found the Xtra to be pretty good for using in the gym, although it is worth bearing in mind that there's no official IPX rating. That doesn't necessarily mean there's no moisture resistance at all, but whether you want to risk it or not is down to your own personal risk appetite. I mentioned the excellent stability previously, and this is especially evident in the 100 jumping jacks test, which it passed with flying colours. Another benefit to the shape of the Xtra is the excellent passive isolation that you get. But what about the active noise cancellation? Coming up, you're going to hear a binaural sample from the usual coffee shop, so you can hear how it fares in reducing those ambient sounds in a typical everyday scene. There's also a comparison here to the best performing budget bud, the QCY Mellow Buds Pro, and the best performing non-stem bud at a similar sort of price point, the Soundcore Space A40. So as you heard there, the Xtra actually fare pretty well compared to some of the better performing options at their price category. I do feel though a lot of it is down to the fit and the seal and the passive isolation you get with the Xtra, because if you push either the QCY or the Soundcore in a little bit deeper, you'll feel that that active noise cancellation is working a bit harder. So I'm pretty sure if you got better tips that fit a little bit better with those other two models, you would see that it falls a little way behind them. But even so, I think it's still a very credible performance when you consider that this is KZ's first stab at an ANC bud. You also get no ANC customization, unlike the Soundcore and the QCY, where you've got different strength settings and different modes. And the same goes for transparency mode too, which is okay. It's fairly natural, although if you listen closely, you will hear a faint crackle, which is a little bit off-putting. It lets a sufficient amount of your ambient sound in, although making out every word of conversations nearby might be a little bit difficult. The absence of a native app to tweak the sound means that stock tuning is going to be even more important, particularly for iPhone owners or Android owners who don't want to mess around with a third-party EQ. So how does it sound? Well, first up, you're going to listen to a binaural sample with ANC both on and off, and then we'll dive into the frequency response measurements. As you heard there in that short clip, the Xtra are bold and dynamic with plenty of emphasis on the bass, and there is a slight change in EQ shift between ANC on and off. The Xtra somehow manages to combine a fairly open staging with added warmth. That warmth is more evident with ANC off, where everything just feels that little bit smoother. With ANC off, male vocals have a little bit more body, but in general male vocals sound excellent on the Xtra regardless of whether ANC is on or off. Again, with ANC off, percussive elements sound a little bit more natural and lifelike. With ANC on, it adds a slightly metallic tinge to claps, stabs and cymbals. Pianos, string and brass instruments all sound more articulate with ANC off. So it doesn't matter whether you're listening to electronic music like house and techno, or whether it's R&B and soul where you've got more male vocals. I think the Xtra sound great and particularly good with ANC off. It's the bass where the Xtra really shines though, slamming in with visceral impact. The sub bass has a real tangible rumble and the mid bass injects fullness into the sound. Bass guitars just growl, but the mid bass decays fairly quickly and there isn't excessive bleed into the mids. This is where it differs from something like the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC, another popular bassy bud, but there's not that kind of hard cutoff as it goes into the mid-range. The Soundcore lingers a little bit longer. And more complex rock tracks, for example, where you've got plenty of mid-bass and lots of different instruments in that mid-bass region, can expose the quality of the drivers on the Soundcore. The Xtra, on the other hand, is less prone to distortion, especially on the sub-bass, and the trebles definitely sound smoother and less fatiguing. If you're a fan of the Engine4 from SoundPEATS, then the sound signature of the Xtra will probably curry favour with you here as well. The bass is a little bit faster and punchier on the Engine4, with the sub bass hitting harder and deeper, but the mid bass is fuller and male vocals have more body and depth on the Xtra. The trebles roll off even sooner on the Engine4 though, and you sometimes lose definition on your percussion. It makes the Xtra a slightly more versatile set than the Engine4. Another good option for bass heads is the Alpha and Delta KS100, where the emphasis is more on the sub bass than the mid bass, which cuts a little bit sooner. The Alpha and Delta are a little brighter and a little more open sounding. I've had these for a little while now and I'll be giving you a full review on that product very soon. But back to the Xtra, and overall it's a fun, engaging, if ever so slightly boomy sort of sound that's a little bit thicker in the lower mid-tones but has a clean presentation of that mid-range overall, and a non-fatiguing treble that has bite but perhaps lacks a little shimmer. If you're one of those people who likes to crank the volume with your TWS, then be a little bit careful with the Xtra. They were hitting 98 dB on around 70% volume. And this is how the Xtra sound when you're using them to make or take a call, and you've been able to reduce all the ambient sounds around you and are in absolute silence. In a moment, you're going to hear how they perform in busier environments, both indoors and outdoors. And it's worth saying at this point that you can make calls with transparency mode on. A lot of buds don't allow you to do that. However, you can't switch mode during a call. First up, we're testing the KZ Xtra in a coffee shop, a busy indoor scene, where you've got the usual mixture of the types of sounds that are going to get in the way of your call. When you're in a thing like a coffee shop or a shopping centre, a busy office, something like that, we've got the sound of innocent chatter and a lot of conversations going on nearby. We're quite busy here, it's on the weekend. We've got sounds of the baristas making coffee, and we've got music coming through the stereo as well. So this is how you can expect the KZ Xtra to perform when you're on a call with this kind of scene. And this time we're testing the KZ Xtra for full performance in a very busy semi-indoor, semi-outdoor scene. I mean, Borough Market here in London on the weekend. So you've got loads of groups of people, lots of chatter going on. You've got the market traders as well making loads of noise. It will be very interesting to hear how the KZ performs in terms of isolating your voice from all of those other sounds and all those other conversations which are going on around you. Whilst I think it's fair to say the voice calls aren't the strong point of the Xtra, when you're in absolute silence, your voice comes through articulate enough. In the indoor scene though, it did really struggle with those environmental sounds, although admittedly it did perform better outdoors. The Xtra have solid battery life, with KZ promising up to 8 hours with active noise cancellation off and 6 hours with ANC on, as well as an additional 4 recharges from the case. I put the Xtra through several charge cycles, testing every time to see how long it lasted, and got between 5 hours and 10 minutes and 5 hours 25 every time with active noise cancellation switched on. I frequently got over 7 hours with active noise cancellation off, but I only found that the case gave me 3 and a little bit additional charges, and as far as I can tell there's no quick charge feature. The Xtra support the aptX adaptive codec as well as AAC and SBC, and they've got a dedicated gaming mode, and when you combine aptX adaptive and gaming mode switched on, you can actually get pretty good latency. Perhaps not quite good enough for your first person shooters and PUBGs of this world, but it's still good enough for casual gaming. It's usually at this point in the review that we go through the app or go through the additional features that we might have missed off, but really there isn't any to speak of on the Xtra, and that is where it does fall a little way short from some of its competition. It's missing things like in-ear detection sensors, the ability to customize your controls, customize your ANC and transparency strength levels, and even something simple like adjusting the volume of the voice prompts, which come through really loud due to that extra volume. If you're not bothered about all those things and you're a bit of a bass head who wants a good out-of-the-box tuning, you want good fit, good isolation and decent battery life, then those are the areas where the Xtra is strong. But outside of those who prefer a more simple life, I think the price will have to come down a little bit before it attracts a wider audience. What did you think of the KZ Xtra? Do you own them yourself? I'd love to hear from you. Do leave your comments in the comments section below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.